Okay, guys, good morning. I think we're ready to get started. And as our tradition, we open in prayer, and actually I'll open in prayer this morning, so let's stand and pray and do the pledge. Lord, I thank you for this day. I thank you for a new day. I thank you, Lord, that we get up and come to work and serve our city. Lord, as we pray this morning, I think about the fires in the state of Idaho. And we just ask, God, that you would watch over all those that are fighting these fires, that you would protect them and keep them from injury. And Lord, we just ask, God, that you would have mercy on our land. Father, send us rain, Lord, instead of lightning. Lord, as we discuss both facilities today and our fire district today, Lord, we ask for wisdom. I ask, God, that you would guide us with your wisdom in how to run this city. Lord, even as we prepare for our budget meetings, we need your wisdom. So guide us with your wisdom. I thank you for our firefighters. I thank you for the service that they provide to the people of this community. And I also ask, God, that your hand of protection would be upon them. Lord, in our facilities crew as they serve this city, Lord, and try to do the work that needs to be done internally, we ask, God, for your grace upon them and your help. Guide us today. Give us wisdom. In Jesus' name, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag for the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Jingula.
Here.
Bills.
Here.
Reynolds.
Here.
Haverfield. Griffin.
Here.
5 present, 1 absent.
So good morning. We have 2 items that we're going to be discussing this morning, as we all know, on our agenda. The first one is our facilities budget. And as our council had requested that we bring that back for a separate meeting so that we could go over the details of the facilities budget. We're going to anticipate it's a maximum of an hour and 15 minutes. That only gives us 45 minutes. If we can be done in an hour, that's great. That only gives us 45 minutes then to talk about the fire district annexation. And so I will let Patrick just take us from here.
Okay, Mayor, Council. The last budget workshops we had, we were asked to bring back more detail for the FY25 facilities budget. So I've put together a presentation on that, and I welcome comments and questions as we go through. So I'm going to start a little bit with just what our mission is. So our mission is to provide exceptional technical and operational support for the city's building facilities through in-house custodial and maintenance services, project management services for maintenance and capital projects, and management of building maintenance contracts. Our focus is to explore cost-effective ways to provide safe and well-maintained facilities for the daily operations of the city of Nampa. We currently have 18 staff members, and each one of our staff members is committed to excellence and we look for cost-effective measures on every project. So who do we serve? We serve the public, and our internal clients for projects and for work orders are City of Nampa employees. So we communicate with our employees every day. We have a work order system. We're available by phone and email. We do communicate with internal clients and have project meetings for all of our maintenance and capital projects to make sure that we're meeting the needs and the scope of the projects. And we have on-call staff available after hours and for weekend emergencies. So we have a rotation where our maintenance staff rotates on that after-hours phone contact. And then for cost savings, we do obtain multiple bids for goods and services, and we do work with client departments to develop cost-effective scopes of work on their projects. We do have some goals for FY25, and there'll be ongoing goals. In the past, we have overworked our project managers and not completed all the assigned projects in a given year. But this year, we're starting a trend of backing ourselves into the amount of projects we can actually perform. So we want to make sure that our project managers can actually perform the projects in a mindful way. And we want them to work 30 hours a week on projects, and there's always emergent needs that come up for the other 10%, or we're doing cost estimates for unplanned projects. We do want to complete our projects, 95% of our projects within our forecasted hours. And we also want to achieve a department employee retention score of 90. Right now, I think we're right about 93. And we also want to cut down on unplanned projects and really work on our planned projects that are in the FY25 budget. We will have unplanned projects, and we're happy to do those, but we really need to make sure that those are priority projects. Hold on. So what do we do? Well, our operations team, we provide cost-effective in-house custodial services for 19 buildings, and our in-house maintenance staff completes 1,500 building maintenance work orders per year. And these are the small things like fixing doors that don't work quite right, replacing light bulbs, doing touch-up painting, things like that. Our preventive maintenance, we have maintenance contracts for many of our buildings. They include fire alarm and security monitoring, fire sprinklers, elevators, HVAC systems, emergency generators, window washing, pest control, parking garage sweeping for the downtown garage, and first aid supplies for the first aid kits in each of the manned buildings. And we do maintain a 10-year building maintenance and capital improvement plan for 29 of our primary buildings. And we maintain a 10-year security camera and lighting capital improvement plan for 62 buildings. As far as our project management, we do develop project scopes and budgets and manage the design and construction of planned and unplanned maintenance and capital building projects. So here's a list of the maintenance contracts. We don't need to go through those now unless you want us to go through that much detail. We pretty much have automatic defibrillators in many of the building lobbies. We do have automatic HVAC controls in most of the buildings. And we have an elevator maintenance contract, which most of these maintenance contracts, they do come with a level of service. If we have a complaint or we have an issue with one of our elevators, they have a 2-hour response time. The same thing with our HVAC systems. If we have an HVAC system down, air conditioning isn't working, we have a 2-hour response time with some of these maintenance contracts, which really helps expedite fixing the problem. We have emergency generator maintenance contracts, fire alarm system monitoring with several companies. We are going to be consolidating that this year. And then we have first aid supplies, again, our HVAC maintenance contract. We have third-party janitorial services for the Library and Development Services Center, but we were going to be bringing those services in-house if that's approved in the current FY25 budget. And we do have parking area sweeping for the downtown garage. We have pest control, security monitoring, and then window cleaning for most of our larger office buildings. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of buildings that have had HVAC issues, and I was asked to discuss these today. So the Hugh Nichols Public Safety Building was built 12 years ago. It has an interesting HVAC system. It has a closed-loop ground well system to provide a water source loop for right around 67 heat pumps throughout the building. Each one of the heat pumps has a DX coil or has refrigerant in it for cooling. The problem we're running into is the heat pumps have a 15-year life, and we're already starting to see them fail. They're also overworked because during this hot spell, when it was over 100 degrees, the cooling water temperature was hovering right at 95 degrees and unable to pull the heat away from those heat pumps. And so it rendered them very ineffective, and some of them actually broke. And so we have been working at fixing those problems. We do have a short-term plan, and the short-term plan is to study the building. Over the last 12 years, we've added equipment and staff, which we believe overtaxes the capacity of the current cooling system. And we believe we may have to add a cooling tower or a chiller to the system to augment the water loop. That said, we have had leaks in the system throughout the 12 years of the building as well. And it could be that in the future, if the ground source pumps or if ground source wells, if that piping system fails at some point, we're going to have to replace both the chilled water with a chiller or a cooling tower, and then actually add a boiler to the building as well, because we would not have, I think every year we have at least one leak. We have to shut down the system, we have to isolate the leak. And these wells are underneath paving, landscaping, they're on site. And so it's not really an effective system to work on to fix down the road. So we'll be working on a study to get next steps and some pricing, and we'll bring that to you here probably in the next couple months. And I'd stand for any questions on any of the HVAC issues we've experienced there.
Thank you for the pause. Council, do you have any questions? Yes, Councilman Rodriguez.
I gotta turn my mic on first. Patrick, I'm concerned with the contract we have with elevators. And so, because I know the library elevator's been having a lot of problems. And it finally got fixed, but it was a motor that was actually getting people stuck in it. And the fire department had to come over and open it for them. So is there a maintenance contract that we have for all the elevators in Nampa, the city of Nampa, to maintain them so we don't have to get to that point? And if we do, what is the amount?
Pardon me. I don't know the exact amount. It's somewhere under $20,000 a year. It is a higher level where we do get the 2-hour response time if something is out. That library elevator that you're talking about, there was a couple issues. It was a door motor, yes. The door motor came later. The first errors were the control board that tells the elevator what to do was failing. And so we replaced it twice because the first one did not work. And it took several weeks between ordering the board and getting a new board because of the age of the elevator, and then they have to program it to be on the same platform, the same software as the existing elevator is on. So that one, it was a combination of long lead times for getting the control boards. We ended up having several service calls. Whenever it went out, they would come out, they would reset it. We got down to where we could actually have our facilities folks reset it. But at a certain point, the original or the first board that ended up failing that we replaced, and then the second board finally did the trick and fixed the problem. The problem with the building really is some decisions were made not to have a redundant elevator as well for a building that big. So when it does go down, it is marketed, it really impacts all of their operations. But we have Alex Wade, our operations manager, during those times. He was going over there every day, resetting the elevator, so that we were sure that it would work. And at a certain point, it just wouldn't perform.
Okay, so I just wanted to see a plan that instead of get to that point to where we're catching up, we could be a little more proactive. So I just wondered about that. Get it before it breaks, I guess, maintaining it that way.
Right. Sometimes these control boards, and we have that on HVAC equipment as well. They'll just fail. Sometimes we don't know it's going to fail. One thing we're looking into is having an extra board on hand, so we don't have to go through the long, tedious process. ThyssenKrupp is a large company. They had to source over a 10-year-old board from somewhere, reprogram it. At that point, they have to keep the software on older computers. Sometimes it's older Windows-based software. So it ends up being, it's really hard to get parts for the old, even if an elevator is around the 10-year mark. But we are going to look into getting some replacement boards. Some other equipment around the city, it's easier to get the boards because it's newer, like the City Hall elevator and the elevators at NDSC, Namath Development Services. We've done a upgrade to the control systems, the pump systems, and a refresh. Those replacement parts are much easier to get because we've done a refresh, and we're probably going to have to schedule that and bring the whole control system up to a newer control system probably in the next couple of years, and that would help quite a bit.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if we don't have any more questions on the heat pump issues, we'll bring more data to you so we can there will be several decision points because otherwise we're going to be hitting the same types of problems with failing heat pumps next year during the cooling season. So it's going to become a systemic problem. So the Hugh Nichols Flooring Project, we have that in Monday's council agenda. If you have any questions, I'll stand for any of those questions, but we do have a detailed packet in there on both the funding and the scope of work. And then there's been some questions about building signage. Back when the flooring project was first started and they pulled up all the corridor linoleum, the walls were painted. And somewhere in that process, the original signs weren't salvaged. And then the project was not immediately worked on because we had a project manager working on it that left the company or left the city. And so when I got back in to facilities in March, we kickstarted to get the flooring project done, and then realized that we needed to get these signs fixed. So there is an order in for the signs. We've worked with police to cut down the number of signs. We have just the number of code signs we need for code, like in the corridors for elevators, stairwells, and then we have some permanent signs right now on the restrooms. And then as far as changing out multiple signs within the office suites, we've worked with police to figure out exactly what they need to replace, because there were some changes on the third floor as well with the traffic and the crime center up there.
Patrick, thank you. I want to go back real quickly to the flooring replacement project. When you get your council packet, you're going to see 3 action items. So it's been broken down into 3 separate action items so that we can fully understand it, because we are doing some cleanup from the process that took place. And I just want to say, Patrick was not over facilities during this time frame. This project has been ongoing, and he was not over facilities at that time. He is now over facilities, but there is some real cleanup that needs to be done in some purchases, and so you're going to see 3 action items, and they're there very intentionally to break it out because it has to do with authorization for spends. And so just if council has questions, please reach out to Patrick, but you can also reach out to Doug, because some of this is a financial piece that he's just trying to keep very clean. So when you get your packet later today, if you have questions, please make sure that you reach out to, for clarification before we get to Monday night. It'll save us a little bit of time. Thank you. And you
Thank
can
you,
go
Mayor.
on. Yes.
I want to switch over to the Idaho Hispanic Community Center. We've had HVAC issues. We took over that building, a little over a year ago, I believe. This is our first summer with the building. We've gone through a spring, a winter, and now a summer. So the electrical control, we have 2 large units. We have a 46-ton unit and a 36-ton unit, a 40-ton unit, and they're large air handlers on the roof that have air conditioner, compressors, condensers, fans, coils, and then the boiler supplies hot water for when we need heating. It runs the hot water through this large air handler on the roof, these 2 large air handlers on the roof. I was looking back in, I think around 2021, probably March, we first started looking at what was then the Hispanic Cultural Center for items in the building that were not being taken care of. And this was one of the items that was identified in those job walks or those building condition assessments, where we identified that the roof, the boiler, and the 2 large air handlers on the roof were reaching end of life, and it appeared they hadn't been maintained very well. What we have done is we have replaced the digital controls that we use citywide, so we can actually adjust temperature settings, things like that, on the units remotely. The problem we're having is electronic controls for the 2nd floor unit have failed. And these are, it's using 1995 Windows technology on these large computer boards that just have relays and switches. And then there's smaller boards that run the different air conditioning components. And we've replaced the board in its entirety, the control board, with a new board that's supposed to work, and it still doesn't communicate to the machine. So the machine turns on for 30 seconds, and then it shuts off because it doesn't know what to do. So what we're doing short term is we've met on site a few times, earlier this week, and we're going to put some aftermarket Honeywell controls on the air conditioning system and connect those controls to our overall system so we can actually control the air conditioning system on this machine. It was working in the shoulder seasons. It's just when it got to being the higher heats, or just really starting to get in cooling mode in May, is when it really started to run into problems. So we are going to hopefully have those controls installed by the end of next week. We're using some of our unplanned maintenance budget to do that. It's right around $7,000 to complete that work. And then there's no guarantee on how long the system will run. The other one, crossing our fingers for the 1st floor, has run great in cooling mode and also in heating mode. And when we're on the roof, we don't even look at it. We just kind of turn our heads and don't want to know we're up there, so we don't jinx it. But anyway, it is not experiencing the same problems, and it is still running on its older control system. Our longer-term solution within the next year is we would recommend replacing the 2 air handling units. This will require a formal bid with minimal design and specifications so that we can have a competitive bid, since it would be a formal bid. The estimated lead time for obtaining the equipment is probably, actually, when I made this slide, I was talking to our mechanical contractor that was helping with us, and they had contacted the vendor, and they originally said 4 to 6 months, but it could be as much as 8 months just to procure the equipment. We want to go out to bid with the same equipment that's on there, so we don't have to radically change the the ductwork or the other connections that go to the equipment, because the newer equipment made by this manufacturer it hooks up identically to the 20-year-old units that are up there. And the estimated project cost is somewhere around $500,000. But we would competitively bid it, and then we would come back to you for consideration on that.
And I will say that, that Jose is working with an organization and looking for grant dollars. So those discussions are ongoing that could possibly help provide for these maintenance upgrades that need to be done. So many times grants don't do that, but I think, and it's not a grant, it's actually sponsor dollars. So he's working on that, and we'll continue to keep you updated. Thank you. So we have a lot more to go through, so we're going to speed it up a little bit to make sure we get to our next.
I want to talk about deferred maintenance a little bit. Every year, we probably get about 20% of what we ask for in capital and maintenance projects that are on our capital and maintenance improvement plans. And that's actually better than we used to have. We have this year in FY25, even after our approved projects, we'll have about $4.8 million worth of deferred maintenance and capital projects. And then we would, if we end up getting 25% of our annual requests funded, we could really knock that down. The thing that really increases this deferred maintenance is we get in, as Hugh Nichols gets older and needs lighting, lamp replacement and ballast replacement, or HVAC heat pump replacements, as an example. But I just want to bring this to your attention. We're in much better shape than we were about 5 years ago. About 5 years ago, Doug and Ed Carras and the rest of finance found creative ways to give us more money to really tackle this, because we had over a $6 million deferred maintenance back then, about 5 years ago. So even though we're adding things on for our newer buildings that are getting older, we really have been really successful in knocking that down, so it's not such a liability to the city. So let's get right into it. Deferred, let's see, maintenance and capital budgets. Let's see here. Oh, we are getting a proposal. Councilman Reynolds suggested that we contact Gordian, who is a national company that basically specializes in facilities assessments, and they've bought RS Beans, which is the most popular cost estimating software for construction in the company or in the country. And we're getting a proposal to perform facilities condition assessments on 29 buildings. We're going to be trying to find some funding in the FY25 budget. We've already talked to finance about this. And the benefits include, it would update our current 10-year capital list and reprioritize it to be more accurate. It would update cost estimates for maintenance and capital projects in real time using more accurate numbers. And it would integrate with our current facilities assessment software that we've had for many years. And it would just improve our budget forecasting overall. Any questions on that? Okay. So here are our 21 planned and unplanned building maintenance projects. We usually have miscellaneous office furnishings and signage projects, a line item that if we have an emergent need for a one-off cubicle, chairs, what have you, we would use this line item for that. Right now, we've used about 3/4 of that for small work order. It's usually if somebody comes to us and they have a new hire and they don't really have an appropriate place for that new hire to work, we'll help work with them to do a small reconfiguration to fix that. The Nampa Development Services building door hardware replacement. Basically, a lot of the older lock sets, we've replaced about half of them, and this has replaced the other half that are probably 20, 25 years old. The Nampa Development Services, exterior caulk and paint. It needs some caulking and paint, and it needs some patching on the stucco. The Parks and Forestry office, we've had some water damage, and this year we fixed that water damage with a French drain. around the building to capture the water because it's been migrating into the building and causing flooring problems and moisture problems. So we're going to be having a flooring replacement. We're going to actually be patching the stucco and painting the building. It hasn't been painted probably in over a decade. And then we have door hardware replacement there as well. We also are replacing their security alarm, which is at end of life. And then we have City Hall exterior asphalt maintenance. We try and do crack sealing. Probably about 5 or 7 years ago, we did an overlay, or not overlay, we actually ground up the entire parking lot and replaced it with new asphalt. So this is just annual maintenance to make sure that we don't get water intrusion at any of the seams. So we also have City Hall exterior painting, and that would be at the upper band on 3 sides. And then we have some exterior brick pointing and sealing where we have some failed caulking at caulk joints and where we have some areas of the brick mortar that need to be patched. Then we have the Hugh Nichols high-speed door maintenance. We can get several years of life out of these doors if we replace some of the critical parts with this project. And then also we're going to rebuild the Sallyport overhead doors as well. That includes motors, all of the items for the door except for the door itself. Then we have the Family Justice Center reduced pressure backflow device. We have their security system replacement, their door hardware, and their door hardware replacement. All of those items are at end of life. And then we're also at the few down at the downtown garage, both at the restroom and at the stair tower, we're replacing the lock sets and closers on there as well, due to wear. At the cemetery has a parking lot reseal and stripe. We'll help them with that. And then with the Idaho Hispanic Center, we're going to do some exterior stucco repair. Right now it's a foam-based stucco, kind of like it's a drive-it system, so it's a very thin 2-part stucco over a mesh over styrofoam or polystyrene. So we'll be filling all the holes there, priming it and painting that, and then caulking all the seams. And then we'll steam clean and repair the restroom floors. The restroom floors have cracks all the way the length of each of the restroom. We're going to have to replace those cracked tile and basically steam clean and then replace any grout that's loose. And that would be that project. And then the Idaho Hispanic Community Center has, a few years ago, had a seal coat put on it. And talking to the consultants, or not consultants, the contractor does our seal coats, they say it has a couple years left. If they did a seal coat now, they'd have to rough it up for it to take. So they recommended that we just basically freshen up the different cracks or expansion joints in the parking lot, and then in a couple years we'll come to you to actually do another seal coat out there.
Patrick, I would ask that on the Hispanic Community Center, before you move into the restrooms and do that work, would you please be communicating both with our office and Jose? I want to see, again, about the dollars, see where our grant or sponsorship opportunities are and what they could fund, and just make sure that we're really well coordinated before we step into the work. Just in case there's a sponsorship opportunity so it doesn't come on to the city.
And we're happy to do that, Mayor. We're really in close contact with Jose. Alex and I talk to him very often, especially with our HVAC issues, but we actually had a long discussion about the different grants he's going for, and he's actually may have found an inexpensive way to fix the fountain. So,
Correct.
So anyway, we will work with him very closely because we just need to have really close contact with those.
Mayor?
Yes.
Council, can I add a couple comments here very quickly? Patrick, I look back at this, and just for referential purposes for the council, in 2023, this budget of $512,000 was $646,000, and it was that way in 22. It was higher. We came into an area where we were underfunding repairs and maintenance. But what I want to point out more importantly is, as you look at that list, you saw items on there for development services, for the parks, for non-general gov departments. Patrick collects those, does the repair, collects the cost, and then the allocation process puts those charges back out to the departments. So we're not using public monies to repair development services building. We're using their money to repair it, but we're just housing them there, and the cost gets allocated out to the departments as it's incurred.
Let's see here. So capital building projects, we have 2 new buildings, the new Fleet Services building, which will start design shortly. The automated weather observing system hangar, which has started design and but will be constructed in FY25. The Streets Building Office Edition, which we just went out to bid this week, this Tuesday. And the Waterworks Building Office Edition, which we're just in the transition between design development and construction documents to get the final documents done. We have a few value engineering items that we're working on. We've been working with Randy Haverfield Councilman Haverfield as a liaison for that project. And so he's given some really great feedback, and we are addressing that feedback. So we'll be having an internal meeting probably, we'll get the data on the 23rd. We'll have an internal meeting probably the following Monday, and then we'll set up a meeting that same week with Randy to go over those items. And I think we've addressed all of his comments, and I think he'll be happy with that. So that's where we're at on that. Let's see. And then we can roll into one by one the capital building projects. It includes additions, remodel projects. We only have 4 in our budget, 4 of the capital projects. The rest, as Doug was saying, reside in other people's budgets. But what we have is the Hugh Nichols garage deck coating, and we're confident we can perform that job under the $232,000. Hugh Nichols Patrol Ryan Workstation upgrade. If you recall, that's where we have some pretty beat up, hard cabinet-style cubicles that we want to replace that have been well used. And then we have citywide security camera upgrades. We have been trying to work on some grants for this. We've been unsuccessful lining up grants for FY25. A couple of the major projects under this are the library camera system, where we've already started to replace cameras because they're aging out, and we don't want to keep, and we're replacing them with the newer camera system that we plan on going, which is owned by Motorola. It's a Vigilon system. And then also the libraries are actually Hugh Nichols building as well. We've had several failures and camera replacements there as well. So it's time to replace those cameras, and actually we'll be replacing the back-end software as well, because I believe that IT is moving for door hardware and for cameras to a newer system, to the Vigilon system.
Councilman Griffin.
These new camera systems will all be able to be integrated into the command center, correct? The new updated cameras. I'm not sure if all of them are already online, but those new upgraded cameras will be able to be connected with them?
Mayor and Councilman Griffin, that is correct. They won't be actively monitoring, but they can monitor them in real time if they wanted to, or go back and look at them. It is the same camera system as streets use for the traffic cameras, and that was part of the reason why we decided we need to shift to this newer camera system. Right now, the camera systems we have, they're all within a 10-year range for most of our primary buildings. And then we also have a handful of we have several buildings like pump houses, well houses, things like that, that eventually we want to get some remote cameras just to basically capturing vandalism, things like that. And then the last one I have on our list is human resources and mayor design and construction. We don't have a set scope of work. We'll be working with the mayor primarily, and then bringing HR in and figure out what the space needs are and figure out what is necessary. So this number, the 80,000, it will cover whatever we decide we want to do, whether it be create a hardwall office, reconfigure some cubicles, et cetera.
So just in case council wonders, this is to create a wall between HR and the offices the mayor's using over, not in where my office is, but on the other side. And it has to do with some of the confidentiality of discussions that take place and it being an open area. So it's putting in a wall, but it also is probably putting in a hard wall where there are cubicles, both in HR and on the other side. So we'll be talking about that further, but it'll come before you as it gets closer. But the main objective is to separate HR and that open space.
Right. And all of these projects will, we will put on consent agenda for going out to bid for all the projects over 50,000. We typically do that. And then we also come to you with the full package after we've bid the project to ask to award bids and award contract. So let's roll into the other ones. For fleet, we have the new fleet building. The overall budget, project budget is $5 million. That's all in with site work, building, construction, and equipment. We have the streets building addition, which, like I said, just went out to bid. We have a new lean-to storage building to cover streets equipment. Our only item there just to make sure that it meets code and it's not a mail order lean-to. Sometimes we need to make sure that it just has the appropriate snow loads. And then just adding heat to the cold shed. We've already added some heat to the existing cold shed. This would be for the remaining bays. And then we have the water building addition and remodel. And then we have for wastewater, we have some additional space for wastewater. We have some underutilized space in some of the existing buildings that can be converted into training rooms, break rooms, or office space. And so we're going to explore that with Jeff Barnes.
The funding source for these on this page?
That would be water renewal or wastewater. So each
And
one of these.
streets are coming from the streets fund?
Yeah, so
just for
streets is
clarity.
under streets, water and irrigation is under water and irrigation, water renewal. That's what it is in the budget, but talking to Jeff, it's just wastewater pays for that. So these are all of those other departments that we still work on projects and help them design them, manage them, bid them, and we actually do construction management during construction. And then that way we can just make sure that we've dialed in the project, it's cost effective, and then we can actually get it done within a time frame and under the cost. So airport.
Yes, Patrick,
yeah.
we do have a question. Council?
Yes.
So can you clarify a little bit better? So on the new fleet building, it's got $1.6 million, and then you've got a total budget of $5 million.
Right. Well, we're wanting to, we probably won't go out to bid until spring. And we haven't started design yet. We're just starting design. So we're going to have the design fees, and we'll probably bid it early to midsummer. So we're only going to have a few months of construction. The remaining construction will be in FY26. So this is the portion of design and construction that would be complete in FY25.
My understanding is there's already a preliminary design. Is that true?
We have a schematic floor plan. We have a building program, a schematic floor plan, and a schematic site plan from another consultant that was developed for the current streets and fleet site. Now that we're on a new site, we have a new site plan. All we really have is a floor plan, a site plan, and a building program, and the floor plan meets the building program. So we basically need to start with a small schematic design period, go into design development, flesh out what the building's going to be, and then go into construction documents. So no, we don't have a set of drawings on this.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay,
What's the size of the building? Excuse me, Mayor.
no, that's fine.
Size of the building?
The size of the building is 23,000 square feet. We need to validate that during design. We're going to go with a construction manager GC delivery model, and we really need to weigh in on that. Given the square footage costs I've seen basic pre-engineered metal buildings come in at, I don't believe we're going to have enough funding to, with all the additional site work we have on a bare site. It was probably enough when we were going to go on an already paved site, but now where we have to clear and grub a site, we have some organics, we're going to have to bring in some engineered fill. I think that our site costs are going to eat into what we had for building costs. And so I think we're probably realistically, if we don't want to change the budget, we're probably within the 15,000 to 17,000 square foot range is what we can probably accomplish. You know, we're thinking about 8% design fees on a $4 million construction budget. And then we have about $600,000 worth of equipment to go into the building. So we're also going to have to vet that number as well. So right now, the way we sit is we just selected off of our preferred list Cole Architects to go forward with design of the building. It's going to be a very simple design because it's a pre-engineered mill building with large bays. It does have a office component and a parts room component, but it's very, very simple design.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I have a comment on this or questions. So what is Doug Adams' wishes for this building? My understanding from previous discussions was it was a pre-engineered metal building. And then as far as your comment on the site work for that new piece of property, wouldn't that be spread out over multiple buildings / budgets? Because there's a master plan supposed to be coming for that piece of property that we purchased?
Mayor and Councilman Reynolds, the site work I'm talking about is just for about a third of the property, not quite a third, it's probably around 3 acres or so. It's for that development of just that portion of the site. So it's basically, curb, gutter, sidewalk, asphalt, stormwater retention on site, and then just building a building pad. We don't need to replace all the soil, but with the geotech, we do have some organics on the site, and so we are going to have to take out some of the existing native soil and replace it at the building pad mostly. And then we have a recommendation for a little thicker asphalt base for the heavy-duty paving where it's required on site. And if we were going to put it over between Fleet and Streets, we already had heavy-duty paving. We wouldn't have had to update the stormwater retention because we're replacing asphalt with a building, so we're not adding impervious area. So those are the costs I'm talking about. It's just we have some frontage costs, and then we have some export-import costs on adequate fill, and then we just have much more asphalt than we envisioned if we were going to be on the street side because we were just going to replace it around the building. We weren't going to replace as much as we need to get the access points and get around the building.
Madam Mayor, follow up?
Yes.
So, just be quite honest here, I feel like what we're seeing is a reduction in the size of this building, which we need to maintain. That we're looking down the road 20 years. And if we reduce this because of mismanagement on our part, that's a problem. And I feel like we need to be more agile. It's a common theme across this whole budget that concerns me, is that we're not agile. We're not looking at ways to find dollars and value engineer stuff and cut. The processes are way too long. The red tape is way too long, and those things cost money. Time is money. And I feel like we need to not compromise on what we need for a 20-year plan. And we need to figure out a way to make these things happen right the first time. And a lot of times all we hear on this side is excuses. And that's what it comes across. I'm just being brutally honest with you, is we hear excuse. And sometimes we don't know what you're going through or why, because we don't know the detail. So maybe if those details were explained to us better at the time, and/or we had consistent information, because the information is always changing, I think that would be really helpful for us to be able to make good, solid decisions. And so anyway, I don't want to see this thing get compromised off of what Doug needs or wants, based off of, well, we don't have money because of site. If we can't afford to build it, we can't afford to build it. There's no sense in, if we need 30,000 square feet and we say, well, we can only afford 10, so we build 10, and then 2 years later, we build another 10 and another 10, it just doesn't make sense. So we need to figure that out.
Okay. Any other comments?
Can I
Yes.
respond, Mayor? Mayor
Yes, you
and
may.
Councilman Reynolds, I share your feelings on this. I want to be able to deliver this building for under $5 million. I was just bringing to your attention, based on the information I know now, and based on what the building department is seeing as a square foot number for plain Jane, non-embellished, pre-engineered mill buildings behind a fence, and for site work. I'm just saying, I have a concern that we're going to have to really back ourselves into this budget and really be thoughtful on how we design it, and design only what we need and keep the square footage. And I agree with you, we need to keep that square footage. That said, the $5 million cost estimate was done, I did that 2 years ago based on, and I don't know where prices are going. So it could be healthy enough and we could deliver the building. But with what I have right now, I don't have a set of plans I can really give you a hard estimate on. But my sense is we're going to have challenges we need to go through during design in order to get this project completed with the program that's desired at 23,000 square feet under $5 million.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Keep going.
Okay.
So we've got 20 minutes max.
We're going to have to really go through these because I have Chris Boaz doing the capital. He needs about 10. You can do it in 5?
You can do
Okay.
it in 5?
Let's just
Okay.
go through. Okay. So let's go to the airport. We're in design for a automated weather observing station hangar. It was originally going to be a utility building where they would be able to store equipment. The decision is made to do a single hangar design, and that's what we're going to do. And so we believe we can bring that in well under around the $250,000. It does not include the equipment. We also are working on, and will have completed by the end of this month, a assessment of the city-owned hangars with the necessary improvements. There are some hangars out there that are leaking that just need the screws replaced, upsize on the existing metal roofing. They need some of the vision lights replaced because those are leaking. And then there's some structural items where we have hangars that were originally meant to be outdoor hangars without having doors. And we've hung doors on them over the years, and so we need to have some structural upgrades on some of these where the doors are dragging, and just beef up some of that structure that wasn't meant for that. Most of this is just making the buildings weather tight and addressing some structural concerns.
That's great. And you don't have to go through, because this is
Okay.
going to take a long time.
Yeah,
So, counsel, I don't know that he needs to read everything about everything, but please pause us if you have a question on a given one. So let's just hit, for example, Harwood Rec Center parking lot, seal at 50,000. We can read the detail, and then we'll just keep going.
Gotcha.
Counsel, just jump in if you need us to pause.
Okay. And then we have a golf simulator room that is in design, and we'll bid it and go forward with that. Civic Center.
Excuse
Go
me,
ahead.
Mayor. Quick clarification for me is, like on those projects, some of these capital projects, is that coming out of property tax money, or is that coming out of the revenue generated from the?
It depends on if it's an enterprise fund. If it's streets, wastewater, Harwood Recreation Center, those are all enterprise funds. The ones that are coming in before they're in our budget, or maybe the parks budget. So departments that are under the general fund it would come out of general fund.
These should be saying on here what fund they're from. And so, for example, Harwood Rec Center is coming from Harwood Rec Center, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Then golf is coming from golf. We go to the next one, the Civic Center, that is a question. The Fort Idaho Center is coming from, so those are the ones that we need to ask. We should have had it very clear what fund they're coming from. So but right now, these right here are coming from the funds represented, golf and from Harwood Rec Center.
I figured that part.
Yeah, but as we
Some of
go,
the other part
I know.
wasn't clear for me, so.
When we go through, let's just say Civic Center, LED conversion, and what fund it is. Do you know that, or who
It would
needs to
be-
say?
Yeah, the Civic Center and the Fort Idaho Center come out of general government funds, but not property taxes. They're funded through the franchise fees and the interest income, but not from property taxes or shared revenues.
Which is true for all the capital.
Right.
It's coming from franchise fees and interest income.
Right.
Okay. So the rest of these probably are all coming from, well, except for the rec department. I'm not sure on that one. So, okay, so go ahead and take us through Civic Center and
Okay,
Fort
Civic
Idaho Center
Center,
just very
we're
quickly.
we're actually starting an LED lighting conversion for the first part of the building. And this is the second phase that we put in, because when we bid it originally, we were way over our estimate, and so we ended up putting the remainder of scope in the FY25 budget. And then as far as the Fort Idaho Center Arena boiler replacement, the boilers are 26 years old. Our boiler company that maintains them is telling us that they're end of life. We can't get replacement parts. We're starting to replace tubes in them. And a refurbishment would be about $275,000, but it really wouldn't be recommended. We can likely get this done. We're going to really pare down what we need for design on this. All we really basically need is a couple sheets so we can competitively bid it. And the arena water heater is also at end of life. They don't make parts. The company that made it went out of business a while back. And it's actually buried behind the arena boiler. So in order to get to it and replace it, we have to do the projects together.
Madam
And
Mayor?
then every year, there is a parking lot crack fill and seal coat cost in there, because there is so much need for, crack seal and out there.
Councilman Reynolds.
Patrick, on the Fort Idaho Center, I disagree with the boiler assessment. I've been out there and looked at it. I worked on a boiler last week that was 80 years old, and we keep putting parts on it. We've retubed it a couple times. But I think that we need to leave the budget intact in case we need to do something out there. The water heater is not buried behind a boiler. The water heater's on the opposite side of the room. It's very easily accessible, with the exception of having bicycles stored in that room and all kinds of other stuff. But it just looks dusty. It's not leaking. So anyway, it's not buried behind the boiler. So
Well, we could, Mayor and Councilor Reynolds, we could go out there and take a look. I'm going off of what our maintenance company that's maintaining this is telling us on what the shape of it is.
yeah,
And
like I said, I feel like if we leave the budgets intact, and then we're going to have discussions on these when they come back before us for approval. But I would take a hard look at that and get some alternative options and maybe some separate budget numbers or something within those parameters.
And we haven't.
Thank you.
Oh,
And
sorry,
I think we're going to, let's
Yeah.
keep going. I appreciate that comment, Councilman Reynolds, and the recommendation to keep the budget intact in the event it has to be done. However, I think it's clear that there needs to be a discussion and a relook. And I have to say, I greatly appreciate our council members lending their expertise and oversight. And so that would be the instruction to you to get with Councilman Reynolds, actually for you to do a walkthrough with him and to take a look at and have a discussion after this meeting about that project before it comes forward.
Mayor, I'd suggest
Yes.
we jump to the personnel part.
Okay.
We can continue to read those.
I agree.
Okay.
There is one that I have a question on.
If you got questions, we can follow up.
Okay, so Councilman Griffins has a question on this, and then we're going to skip and move to personnel. Go ahead.
Okay, with the contracts and grant funds, I know it was mentioned with the direction of VRT, is this citywide ADA transition plan affected if we do not fund VRT?
I think I would have to defer possibly to Tom Points on that. I think that so that is coming from CDBG grant funds, but it is a supplemental recommendation because this reflects all the ADA work that has to be done in the city. So, Tom, would you have another comment on that? But this is funded through this CDBG grants. Citywide ADA transition plan, and actually, Patrick, you worked on that. So, maybe it isn't Tom, maybe it is Patrick, but I'll let you two talk about it. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'll put you on the spot.
Mayor, Councilor Griffin, so we are working on a transition plan which includes facilities and also includes infrastructure. So the VRT portion of it is, and your decision on whether to fund VRT doesn't really have anything to do with the facilities part. That's completely separate. And we do need to have a plan. We do need to keep investing into both facilities and infrastructure, and we do that through these grant programs. And so, but it's not related. Yep.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Patrick. So I think council's asked that we go ahead and move to a different section because they can read this.
Okay.
And then they can actually get back to you if they have any questions before Monday evening's public hearing and budget approval. So Councilman Bills, you were wanting to move over to?
I just thought we should move on to the custodial services, the talk of adding. Seems like that was covered already in the budget hearings.
It was in our budget hearings.
So
Do you have questions regarding that?
nope, wanting to see us just keep moving to get to the next
Okay.
agenda item.
Okay.
Well,
So no real questions because it was handled in our previous budget workshop. We did talk about expanding custodial services. So do you have any other questions? So I think what we're wanting to make sure, unless someone says otherwise, is that we get over to what Chris Boaz was needing to cover. Okay. So Patrick, thank you. It's all here. Appreciate the presentation. I think council needs to continue to review it and then come back with any questions. We'll go over to Chris and what he's wanting to cover.
not on here. You go there? Okay.
Hopefully that's a little bit bigger, a little bit easier to read. Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Council. My name is Chris Boaz. I'm the Grants and Capital Manager. And over the past few months, been working with Patrick just to clean up the facilities budget stemming from mainly FY23 into this fiscal year, giving him a clean slate in FY25. So what I wanted to do this morning is just kind of give you an overview of where we are, and then I can stand for questions. So if you look on this top section, you can see that in FY22, we had a remaining budget, which is that far right column, of just under $500,000. And then in FY23, we did a better job of getting our budget to actuals. So our budget was much more on track. And then you see a large discrepancy in this year in FY24. And part of the reason for that is what Patrick did when he took over is kind of put a halt to all the new projects that were just starting, because what we were doing was we kept taking on more and more projects, and it became a capacity problem and not a budget problem. So putting a halt to these new projects, we were able to catch up on previous projects that were stemming from previous fiscal years. So we're going to scroll down to this next section. And what this next section is specifically our building maintenance object code or line item. And in FY24, you can see that we had $587,000 budgeted, and our actuals this year so far are $353,000, giving us a remaining budget authority of roughly $230,000. FY23 had multiple projects that were still not finished. So in stopping the new projects or putting a halt on the new projects, what it allowed us to do is use this remaining budget authority of 234 to cover all of our FY23 projects so that we can complete them. And then once we get into 25, Patrick, again, we'll have a fresh slate. Then we're going down to our capital budget. And it's a similar situation. So we had, in FY24, we had just over 1.3 budgeted, and a large portion of that was what we'll call our facilities contingency, in which we still have 580,000 of it that has been unallocated or unspent. And then in this middle column right here, you'll see the second amendment. We have 317,000. What that is that again is FY23 projects rolling into FY24 so we can complete those projects. So, and that's with trying to, sorry, Mayor, did you have a question?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Do we know that the FY23 projects rolling into 24 will get done? And if not, should we be, and I know, Doug, the amendment's ready to go, are we going to be rolling them over again after this amendment? Or, I know this has been the million-dollar question we've all had, right?
The hope is not. We strongly prefer to not roll them again. It has a tendency to make the budget appear larger than it is. But I think Patrick would have to speak to the capacity of doing them, but that has been the direction that we've been given. Still, the challenge is, if I pull the reins too tight, then we don't have enough money. And if I let the reins too loose, we over budget. So I think with the council's help in the future, we can design a middle ground, but we're trying to allow them the capacity to get the budgets done, but more importantly, to spend the right money on the right project at the right time with the guidance that Councilman Reynolds has talked about. So.
Well, and I guess the reason I asked the question is that we've got budget authority of $1.2 million remaining. So do we have to do a budget amendment for $317,000 when we've got budget authority remaining? Should it just be going to FY25?
We could do that. I chose on this case not to, because these are roll forwards from the prior year, and I wanted to call them out and clarify them so they would become visible to the council. They were from 23. We're using last year's budgetary authority to finish them up, not extending the current year's budgetary authority. We could leave them out and not do the amendment, but for clarity, and so there's a visual flow to the process we're doing. I wanted to add the rollovers last year. Where we had new projects this year in 24 that council has approved, we've used the contingency to fill those in the existing budgetary capacity.
You know what's difficult, because like if you go back up, I'm wondering if, I don't think the second amendment of 317,000, does it match the rollover, or maybe it is right there, the rollover from 23, right? The remaining budget authority from 23 was $1,137,000. So
we're not bringing every single dollar forward. Just that 317 is primarily the amounts from the police station on the floor, the $77,000.
we're doing it by project.
By project.
By project.
Yes.
And so I guess the last question would be, just for clarity, not just for myself, but for us as a whole, those dollars that have not been rolled forward, that were budgeted,
right,
because we've got that $1.2 million or whatever that dollar amount was right there, where do those dollars, do they go back into your
drop
capital?
back into the fund balance. If they're unused, then they become available for council to choose how to use them
And we
in the
begin
future.
all over on those
Exactly.
projects that they were allocated to,
Exactly.
basically are canceled.
Yes.
So the only reason you're rolling it over is because the actual project is continuing.
Right.
But the other $1.2 million, those projects are done.
And they may come
And
up
they'll
in
have to come back
25 or
new.
26, but they're not coming up now.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
And just to add one more note to that, I do know one project from FY23 will continue into FY25, and that is the Hugh Nichols flooring, because we have that new contract that the actual work will take place in FY25, but we will capture that budget authority in the first amendment in FY25.
In 25.
From the GenGov capital fund balance.
Thank you.
And unless you guys have any other questions?
Mayor,
Yes.
I do have a question, and it's complete lack of understanding with the rollovers on the budget authority remaining. You had mentioned we had the surplus in the facilities maintenance, the 5,350 budget, that there's a budget authority remaining of $234,000, and that fund will be used to make up for projects that were not completed in '23. I'm just trying to understand, is there any projects in '24 that were planned and budgeted for that we're also not doing because we're playing catch-up on '23? So now we're using funds that we budgeted for '24 on '23, and then we're going to get '24's budget on '25, and just it keeps rolling over?
Yes, Councilman Griffin, I do understand that. Patrick would have to be the one to speak to the specific projects that were halted. And
Mayor and Councilman Reynolds, or Griffin, we can, I can share that with you a little later. I can't just bring it up right now in the time given. But yes, we canceled probably about 20 projects, FY24 projects, maintenance projects, because there was no way we were going to get them designed, bid, or completed. It would compromise the rest of the items that we were working on. It was just too much workload. So a few of those made it to the FY25 budget, and the majority of them are going to come back in the FY26 budget because it was determined that it wasn't the right time to do them, and we can wait a while.
So my only comment then or question would be, it might be concerning initially for me as not understanding this whole process, and I can meet with you and you as well in understanding that, getting closer to hitting the actuals on '23 so we don't have to over budget in the future year to cover the previous year just doesn't feel transparent in my opinions of saying, okay, well, we wanted to get all of our '24s done, but we didn't, so we're going to use that funds to get what we needed to get done in '23 that we had budgeted, and then it's just this rollover effect on we're budgeting for the future but paying for the past, and it's just going to keep going.
Actually, we're not doing that. Doug, I'd like you to explain it. It may sound like it, but that's absolutely not
And
happening.
I definitely.
This,
Yeah.
I really appreciate the question because you're right. This has the air of creating a bit of confusion and lack of clarity. But it comes back to two questions. One, when Councilman Reynolds asked about the fleet building, let's do it right? So, and when we look at the number of projects that maintenance was trying to do in facilities, they're trying to do too much. So we have this process where we'd have, these big eyes, we can accomplish a lot of things, we put a lot of things in the budget, we don't get them, and then we start this process of this roll forward and leapfrog and roll forward. So what we're trying to do now is stop that and be more consistent on how we budget with the dollars and the capacity to complete the project. Just because we have a need doesn't mean the project gets into the budget. It needs to be prioritized. And I think in the 24 actuals and the 25 budget, we're trying to accomplish that so we can stop this leapfrogging and add more clarity to the budget process so that if there is one or two projects that happen to cross over the year, it's just one or two projects, not 20. So it's putting a stop to it and restarting. But you're right, the past was dusty, so to speak.
What we are wanting to do is be very detailed and transparent. When a project is budgeted, the dollars that are budgeted for that project are spent on that project. They don't get reallocated unknowingly to a different project.
Yep.
So there isn't a blending of these dollars ever. They have to be true to the budget and accountable, and then they all come back, they come
Right.
before council.
They do, and thank you for calling that out.
If it's a major project, which these big ones, they all come back before council as individual projects,
Right.
authorization to go to bid if there's a bid process, and then authorization to move forward. Smaller projects don't because they're small projects, but we do stay, and that's something that we're really being very specific on right now, is making sure dollars that are budgeted for a project stay within that budget, and then if there's a variance, it gets accounted for,
It's a
whether it's over or under.
Mayor, you're exactly right. It's a complex process. Let's take a streets project, a roundabout. The initial budget may be 2.5, the actual comes in at 2.8, but the project needs to move forward. So how do they deal with that $300,000 additional? Well, they come to council and say, original budget was this, the actual was this, but then we have to go back behind the scenes and really retune the budget to take that money away from some other project to add to this one per council's approval. And that's just one element. That happens all across the city as actuals and budgets when they don't line up. So two cures there. One, can we get a little more accurate on creating the budgets? I hope yes. And two, can we be more transparent critically to the council on exactly how those funds are being used if they're being reallocated?
So, Mayor, and I apologize, I know we're right at time, but my only clarifying question then, it was mentioned if the money is following the specific project, that the budget authority remaining for FY '24, the $234,000, will help cover some of those that weren't completed in '23. Does that get brought back forward and then reallocated, or how do they get those funds if they're specific to a project?
If it is, most of those projects, when they're, then you're talking, the $233,000 you're talking about is the maintenance cost, not capital. It's focused on maintenance. That's the aspect there. So those project costs, if they're a small cost like a $200, $300, $400 repair, that's just something that they'll take care of and pay. But if it's larger, $25,000 and up, they'll be coming to the mayor and to the council for approval before they are approved for a process.
Good questions. Thank you. Yes.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I have one last comment. I would suggest, well, two comments. I would suggest that you spend some time with Doug and review that. It'd be very helpful for you. It's complicated. So, my last comment on the facilities budget is, it was never my intent personally, when we went through this during budget hearing, to take away monies from projects that need to be completed across the city. We know there's a lot of needs. I think what my concern was, I look at things like staffing of management, where we have 6 managers and 10 employees. It seems it seems top heavy to me. And then I see where we have errors on projects of like the FJC project, and I don't want to keep beating a dead horse there, but we know that there were some things that were not done exactly how we would like it to be. We wasted some dollars there, quite a few dollars. The Hugh Nichols flooring project, we asked for that as council in May to be back to us in June for RFP. We haven't even started on that project yet. It's like we have to be, time is money, and we have to be agile. We have to figure out our processes. I know that I'm not picking on Patrick specifically because he inherited a department that had issues, and I appreciate that he's willing to work on getting this stuff completed. And I think that as far as myself goes, and probably the rest of the council, is that we just need to have some trust built there, that we can get these projects done quickly, cut the red tape, and get them in time on budget. And I think that's my closing comment on the facilities thing.
Thank you so much. Patrick, thank you. I think the message here is, council, you need to ask, visit with Patrick, visit with Doug prior to Monday night if we have any further questions. So make sure you schedule time and get with him. Thank you very much.
I'll make myself available to any questions by council for the next
Thank you.
couple days.
Tomorrow, you've got tomorrow.
That's it.
Yeah, or a little bit on Monday. So, okay, we're going to transition over to fire. Kirk, it's great to see you. Thank you for being here today. And for you, can you through Teams?
Okay.
Yeah, that may take a minute, though.
Yeah, do we want to take a quick break, and I'll do that?
Oh, we should have been doing it during this last presentation because it could take a bit.
Unless we get into a really long question and answer, it should not take the full 45 minutes.
Could you Paul, do you mind helping him get into Teams so that he can share his thing? And then Kirk, why don't we let someone else do that, and maybe you could talk to us.
I have a question for Kirk.
Go for it.
Well, somebody else is working on the electronic side. My computer no longer connects to the city network.
We'll let Ron work on it while we ask you questions. Thank you. There you go.
So Mayor and Chief Carpenter. Thank you. Mayor, Chief Carpenter, a couple of things, clarification. So on the slide that I think your presentation that we were given a copy of.
Yes.
Okay, so some of the items yet to be finished. I wanted to have clarification. Record survey for the fire station number 2. We had discussed that and worked through that 2 or 3 or 4 months ago.
Yes.
Is that completed or not completed?
The record of survey is completed. We had some feedback, so we had to go back and repair some right-of-way specific to streets and utilities. But it has been completed again, and it's with the mayor as well as a couple department heads to ensure there's nothing else lacking in the record of survey.
Okay.
I just
and
need to sign it.
So then the original station number 2 property that was allocated for station number 2 years back, I'm told that through this record of survey change or because of the wrong deed and the legal description, et cetera, that an additional acre of ground has been added?
It's actually a half acre, and it's just to the east of the station. When the property was purchased, it was purchased as a full 20-acre parcel. Obviously, at that time, the city didn't even consider that the fire department would ever be annexed into a district. And so when the station was placed, there was no property lines placed for the station. So at the time that asset was transferred to the district, it was transferred as a 20-acre parcel with the station. Wasn't discovered until we were doing end-of-year insurance checks, and then we discovered the property lines were 1,500 feet long, and that was when we discovered it was the full 20 acres. Discussing with the mayor, we know that Station 2 is our busiest station, and an opportunity to add a specific unit there would be incredibly helpful for our response times. So we requested enough space to not impede on the soccer fields or any of the park portion of that recreational asset, and asked for a half acre to add to Station 2 in the future to insert another unit out there.
Okay, so was that then approved by council?
I think it was in a prior meeting.
Yes.
We did go through that approval process here at council so that we could go ahead and complete it. So I believe, and Shar, you could maybe do a search and double check, but it's my understanding, if I remember correctly, that was totally approved through council to go ahead and approve it as it was proposed.
It was in the same council meeting that we also talked about the record of survey for training and redesigning those lots into 2 specific A and B lots.
Okay.
We can get that to you if you'd like it.
Midway Park acreage?
So when the Midway Park property was purchased, the fire department participated in that for an acre for a future station out there. As we went through the annexation process, that lot was never transferred to the district, and as we considered that property, it's just not big enough, and where it's located between the Public Works piece that's there, they have some pumps there. The acre that we have or was designated for us is right next to that, and the access as well as the size of the lot isn't appropriate for a fire station. And so knowing that the city may grow and have use for that, we left that 1 acre lot with the city.
Okay. So
that one's done.
That's a non-issue, and
Yeah.
Station 6 kind of handles that.
Yeah, we'll have to have a different location for a
So
station.
At some point in the future, the district
Yes.
will pursue acquisition of land for
Correct.
growth.
Yeah.
So the city, so that's not a bone of contention?
No.
Okay.
Unless you don't want the acre, and then we'll take it. I'm pretty sure with how much the pickleball courts are being used out there, that will become more pickleball
And
courts.
Fire Station 5 land lease, that just needs to be updated, or?
So yes, that is in with the city's contract team. What our efforts were there, it's an annually renewing contract that we would have needed to do. Actually, I think it was 3 years. Our goal was just to make it as perpetual as we could for long-term lease. That property, as it sits in the airport development plan, is very difficult for transfer or purchase. And it would take many, many years to do that. And rather than just renegotiate a lease, we wanted to negotiate a continued lease for a long term. And so I think both our legal and contract team from the city have been just updating and improving that and getting it back into a space where we won't have to reconsider that on a regular basis.
Thank you,
That
Mayor.
answer your questions? Which really, thank you, because it really shortens this, and I think that's one thing you
Ron,
had
could
in
you go back
mind there.
just 1, 2?
So, thank
Just
you.
trying to get to the bottom line.
Get to the bottom line. What do we have outstanding today, really? Because
Yes.
all of those things are done. We're really down to
One.
one.
One real,
Yeah.
I mean, one item, yeah. So I guess, Mayor and Council, first, I do want to thank you for the opportunity. The mayor and I have, and many of you on council have discussed some of these items for years. And I guess in that, I just wanted to thank you for the time and the opportunity to come in front of you and present. I did provide a QR reader there. You have the presentation. The QR reader actually gives you a little bit more data if you would like, if you find it interesting. I can honestly say as we go through this, we're gonna be reviewing some history and really detailing on how we are where we are today. The QR reader would give you the opportunity to look at some of the documents that I used in some of my research, as well as our webpage. And yeah, so if you're interested, you can hit the QR. I also have it on the last slide of the presentation. Next slide. Many of you weren't on council when we, go ahead. Yes, sir,
Excuse
Mr.
me,
Bills.
Chief, want to interrupt you. I need to know, Mr. Nichols, your role this morning.
Do you want me to?
Councilman Bills, I'm one of the old guys in the room.
Correct. I know
And
that.
that still has some institutional memory about some of what went on. And so the chief asked me to be here in case you want to hear from the old guy.
Okay, so
And-
you're available for some questions?
Yes,
All right,
And
excellent.
for the record, that was Bill Nichols with White Peterson.
yes, excuse
Yes.
me, Your Honor.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I know that many council members that are on council today weren't on council when the annexation process happened, and that was a lot of work and a lot of detail went into that process. And I guess my second slide, I don't know if it'll work, but I just had a roll of pictures, and I think from me to you and from our department to the city council, we just wanted to remind everyone that just although we're underneath a different taxing entity, we are the Nampa Fire Department, and this community is very important to us, and we're very proud to serve the community. And we realize that we do that through the relationships in which we've maintained and are lucky enough to have. Whether that's Doug in finance, to IT supporting us through the transition, to this team here at council, to our partners in emergency response at PD. The success of us is still lying within those relationships. And it is through those relationships that we get the opportunity to reach far into our community. And so even though we aren't in your budget hearings, which I would say I missed, I'm sure you don't miss having the fire department in those, we still think of every dollar just as you do, because we serve the same citizens. The same citizens that vote for our commissioners are the ones that put you in place to represent them and to provide a safe and happy place for them to raise their families and work. Go ahead and slide 3. So thank you, Councilman Bills, for asking the questions. Really, we have one problem that remains for the community of Nampa, and that problem really exists just through historical growth. And we're going to just review, I'm hoping to take you through and just review how we got to where we are today. But the problem that exists is that fire administration doesn't have a permanent home. or facility for us to call home. And I guess as the chief, as the end of my career nears or is foreseeable in the windshield, it's disconcerting to know, and I don't want to leave without securing the future for the organization. And so we're going to just review how we got where we are today, and some of that I could tell you that we have people in the room, such as Councilman Bills, that are going to be much more familiar with some of these items. Go ahead and next slide. Because in 2006, I was a driver at Station 3. I understood that there was an urban renewal district, but really had no interest in anything but driving fire engines and taking care of emergencies. So I'm sure all of you can think back to where you were in 2006. Some of us, what grade we were in. But this really was not just something that I went back to look at to prove something. I can honestly tell you it was a joy to kind of learn some of the obstacles that our former leaders met in the years of 2006 through 2012. Some pretty immense hurdles that had to be worked through. Some of them pretty fun to read if you want to go back to former council notes. So in 2006, under Mayor Tom Dale, the NDC was created. And really, the NDC is an urban renewal agency, and they work with partners such as the City of Nampa, Downtown Nampa Community Association, and other partners to improve our community. We watched next door as Caldwell's Urban Renewal District was immensely successful, and I believe even with the challenges that our NDC has met over the years, we also are seeing a very successful Urban Renewal District that, as you know, will sunset in the coming years, in 6 years. Next slide. When NDC was formed, this map is actually probably from around 2011, but when NDC was formed, they really identified, 6 priorities that they were going to focus on, and that was a central library. At the time in 2006, that was an 80,000 square foot, three-floor building with parking structure. North Nampa industrial infrastructure, a central police station of 50,000 square feet located in downtown, 2 floors with a secure parking garage, the Nampa Caldwell Boulevard improvements, Franklin Boulevard improvements, and freeway interchange improvements. So this map is really just to show you what that block, which is now named the Pivot Block, or nicknamed the Pivot Block, looked like when NDC came into fruition. As you can see there on 12th and 3rd, that was the public safety building, the Hugh Nichols Public Safety Building, where the police department was housed, along with dispatch. They had already outgrown the building really in 2006, 2007. And next to them was the fountain on 12th and 3rd. If you remember that, we remember that because it would get slippery and we'd go to calls there all the time from people running through the fountains. On the corner of 11th and 2nd, was Fire Administration Building. It was the old Idaho Power Administrative Building, and when the city acquired it, it became Fire Administration. And then on 11th and 3rd, you had Central Services. That was where finance was housed, as well as where people would go to pay their water bills and payroll. And that was the block that the city owned. Next slide. This is a quick timeline. We won't go through the whole thing. As I said, we'll be hitting most of this, but in 2006, again, the NDC was formed, and at the time, that priority of a central police station, because if you were here at that time, our officers were having to park across the street in a lot, walk across 3rd Street to get into their facility, very unsecure. And one of the priorities was to create a building that would handle the growth of the police department, as well as provide them an opportunity to be safe as they were transitioning between work and heading home. And then as we'll go through in the next slides, there was a lot of things that happened from 2006 and on. So here you see in 2006 where we see those priorities down there in the bottom corner with some designated funds as to how much they believed those projects would cost. And so you can see the public safety building there at 17.5. Next slide. And then we get through 2006 to 2000. This is the 2008 NDC financial audit. From 2006 to 2008, a lot happened with NDC. They hired a consultant to come in and give them guidance in how they could best handle the priorities that they've set for their organization. That consultant returned back to them and said, one of the most valuable pieces of property in your city is sitting underneath your police department and your fire administration building and your central services. It would be more profitable to the city for you to sell that to commercial growth. And so at that time, they had already considered starting to purchase property for the library, which was going to be at 11th and 4th, and that's now nicknamed the Half Block. And the new pivot block was named, and NDC pivoted with the city's partnership. In 2008, the city loaned NDC $3.5 million, and they identified a structure where the public safety building now sits. It was the Desert Inn. It was a fairly old motel, actually pretty famous in its history as I read about it. And they pivoted their plan to go from a public safety building housing just police to a public safety building that would house police, fire administration, and IT, or other city departments. So in 2008, city loans NDC $3.5 million. They purchased the Desert Inn, and then some legal difficulties came into play for NDC as they started to have some challenges in the state of Idaho on NDC's use of funds. And so we can see in the audit of 2008 of NDC, they have pivoted. They are now planning on that pivot block being something they could sell to increase growth within our community, as well as jobs and increasing the use of downtown. We do see here they have started design on the public safety building, as well as funded the legal fees in defending the stance of how the NDC could use funds. Next slide. As we move forward through 2008 and 2009, in July of 2008, the city, or NDC identifies, along with the city's partnership, the Desert Inn, and that sat at 115 9th Avenue South. At that time, council votes unanimously at a special meeting of the purchase price of $1.5 million. And we'll watch as we go through some of these articles and watch the growth and thoughtfulness as it comes to this specific building. You can see here the original plan for the public safety building went from the 17.5 that was going to happen when that public safety building was going to be built where the old police station sat, to now $27.5 million, understanding that it needed to be increased to house the other departments that would be inside the building. And throughout these articles, you can see as people are quoted, it's an exciting project because this is the first true big project that NDC is going to complete in that beautification of our downtown. So next slide. This article just talks about the Desert Inn closing. The city has purchased the property, and again, they have a plan for a larger building at that $27.5 million. They begin looking at the demolition contracts for the lot, and I will just to remind council, they're still in a legal defense at this point. They're moving forward knowing that they're still having to defend that this might not actually, if they were to lose the court argument, that the plan moving forward might not actually be workable. So next slide. In 2009, we look at NDC's financial audit report, and this was a pretty exciting year for NDC, although we see some other things that are beginning to occur. If you remember 2009, we had an economy that was moving downwards. If we look at the economic factors that are listed in their financial audit, you can see the NDC is starting to get a little worried. Although the numbers are coming back above projection, they're starting to go down, so that there is some concern about, are we going to be able to manage all the projects that we have on our list. The court challenge that had been placed on them was resolved, and it was found that NDC was good to move forward. And at this time, they were able to move forward with the $15 million bond that was taken for the construction of the public safety building. So they move into design and engineering of the public safety building, and they begin site prep at the Desert Inn. Then, with the economy moving downwards as it was, in November of 2009, the building that they had planned to be over 80,000 square feet at this point is planned for a reduction. So although it's 3.5 times larger than the previous public safety building, which was just housing the police department, they still have a plan at this point for now a 2-story building. So that went from a 4-story to a 2-story, just because of economic times and trying to save funds for the citizens of Nampa. Next slide. In 2010, we watch as NDC continues to, I wouldn't say celebrate, but continues to move forward with the decision made in course that they can use the $18 million revenue allocation from the bonds. And now we once again see that there's been a change in the size of the building. It moves back to 60,000 square foot with a parking structure. And it should be started, they hope to start it in 2010. Move to the next slide. At this point, the economy is pretty low. Mayor Tom Dale urges the council to move. The council is considering possibly holding, and Councilman Bills, I think you were on the council at this point, if I remember right, or you had just left.
No, I wasn't on the council until
14. I apologize. I just remember you negotiated with us at one point, and I think it was before you were on council, wasn't it? I don't know. Maybe my years are getting mixed up.
14 and 15.
Okay. Those are memorable years, aren't they?
Still there.
So in 2009 and 10, we have a depressed economy. The mayor's urging the council to move forward. They had considered holding and trying to pay for some of these improvements with cash. And he's saying, don't hold off, move forward, because if we wait, then it will be 2020 before we get to see the library. And council move forward. They went out for bid for Hugh Nichols Public Building, and at that point, the Nampa Economic Director, Cliff Long, did say that it would include the administrative offices for the city's fire and police departments, and they're moving forward with the bond and getting everything finalized with the bid. Next few slides go through just the city council's work at that time of approving the bond, and you can keep going to the next slide. We do see in August of 2010, they do stay somewhat on track, and they do the groundbreaking of the public safety building. The estimated time for completion was 16 to 18 months, and they did keep that timeline. This is the groundbreaking for a building that's now 3 stories with a basement, 64,400 square feet with a 216 vehicle parking garage. And it will take the whole block. And then they approved the building contract for the construction of the building. Next slide. And in 2011, we can look at the NDC's financial audit. They're partially through the public safety building. The building is actually, it's an exciting project. Again, it's the first NDC project that's taking place. They have the $18 million through the bond for the building itself. I think total project was to be about 18.5 is what their total project budget was. And so in 2011, they're busy at work, not only building the public safety building, but continuing the process of trying to find property for the library. In September of 2011, the public safety building is beginning to near completion. Again, it's the finalized 65,500 square feet. The $14.5 million project did come in $2 million less than anticipated, and I believe that's after the purchase of the property. It just continually cited that it's going to be an amazing addition for the police department, fire department, and the city divisions that will be housed in there.
Kirk, can I say something
Yes.
real quickly, and that is that I think your intent here is to set the foundation,
Yep.
which you're doing really well. I appreciate all the
Yeah.
work and the history. For time's sake, I'm noticing we're at 2011 going into 12 now. We've got a few years yet to go.
We're almost done.
Okay, because I want to make sure we have time to talk, but what you've done is extremely important
Yeah.
to the discussion that yet to come.
Perfect.
Good job.
Thank you,
and
Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pretty exciting. As the building nears completion, it's actually a highly touted building. It's very well constructed. It meets some pretty significant award requirements. You can see here it's in the Idaho Business Review. The focus of that 2011 in November, it is talked about all the awesome opportunity that building will bring. Next slide. In 2012, this is the point at which the building has been completed. It gets completed in January of 2012, and we see some pretty interesting things occur with NDC. So the building is completed, fire, police, and IT move in, and you can move to the next slide. And this year, NDC approaches the city and is prepared to give the public safety building to the city. And in return, the request is to be given the pivot block for the library project. With the downturn of the economy, I don't know all the details, but the decision was made since the city owned the whole block, they were unable to acquire the properties for the library. They would pivot again, and the library would be going on the pivot block with some commercial as well. So we can go through the process of the resolution. You can go forward. The resolution and the acceptance from the city. This is something. One or two more sides. Again, both the designers as well as the contractors highly tout that they're involved in this project because it was an amazing opportunity for our community. One more slide. They cut the ribbon in April of 2012. One more slide. In June of 2012 is where City Council meets and they discuss the resolution in 22-2012 where the Hugh Nichols building will be transferred to the city, and in return the pivot block will go to NDC for the next project that's slated for them. In that meeting, this is where I think that oftentimes, as Councilman Reynolds said, we plan for, or hope to plan for 20 years in the future. So in 2012, in July, the economic developer Cliff Long said, this is going to be an amazing place for our police, fire, and IT for decades to come. Little did we know what was coming, because it worked for about 3.5, 4 years. And then we watched as the growth of our community necessitated growth of our first response, specifically in our police department partners. And within 4 years, we had outgrown the space that was provided at the Hugh Nichols Public Safety Building. It gets transferred to the city through ordinance. If you want a good read and go back to some fun city council meetings, this one was great, August 20th of 2012. You get to really watch as our council leadership digs into what the true meaning is behind what's about to happen with the pivot block. So you have some differencing of opinions and you get to listen to some really good debate. Not listen, you get to read. I listened to books, I had to read these, I apologize, but you get to really have some fun. In 2013 through 2022, you can go to the next slide, the NDC continues to, celebrate the public safety building. It is the keystone to the beginning of all of their works. It's listed throughout their publications each year at the annual report as well as their audits. Next slide. So the timeline for the Nampa Fire Department. In 2015, there were conversations that started to begin. Now this is really only 2.5, 3 years into being in the public safety building, and some of it was jokingly, but the reality is our partners in the police department were growing, and Chief Huff would come down with a tape measure and tease us that we needed to start moving because he's growing too fast. But the police department had grown enough that they don't have anywhere to house important portions of their department. And knowing that there was nowhere, if you look at all the things that were occurring, whether it was impact fees, and there was nowhere else for police that made sense for them to move to. I mean, all of their resources were in this facility. The Nampa Fire Protection District, that time realizing what was coming, did look at purchasing a building right behind the public safety building. That didn't work out. At the time, City Council had just considered annexation in 2016, and there was some, I would say, emotional concern that we would be gone from the city if we moved away from the police department. So that concept of us moving behind the public safety building was declined. And then we began really feeling the squeeze of growth. We watched as police were putting people in cubicles with IT, and so it became to a point where it was time to make a decision. And in 2019, the mayor let us know that we would be moving to a different building. And in the spring of 2020, Nampa Fire Admin was moved from the public safety building to its current location at 9 12th Avenue South. It was an available facility where economic developments and HR had been housed for some time. If you haven't been in there, it's a great facility. It was remodeled by the city. It's historically beautiful, and we do enjoy being downtown. On January 1st of 21, so during all of this, we were also doing all the work of the annexation and doing the research and the study of what it would look like moving forward. January 1st of 2021, the Nampa City Council and the Nampa Fire Protection District Commissioners voted, and the Nampa Fire Protection District annexed the City of Nampa's Fire Department. We worked under the city as employees for 1 year and began collection for the Nampa Fire Protection District and property tax. And then we come to today. We're appreciative of the space, but we have outgrown the space we're in. We are now housing people at our stations from our command staff. And so we can move to the next slide. We do think that you miss us enough that you still have us in the public safety building on your website and the Hugh Nichols Safety Building, so I just thought I'd send that in. I know that it's probably Chief Huff just missing me and wanting us back. In 2018, the city hired Galena Consulting to help us with our impact fee study and our CIPs. And at that time, we already knew, this is actually where the mayor's decision came from, we already knew there was not many choices left. The fire was going to have to move. And so the question was asked to Galena how that could happen. And really there was kind of two directions we could go. One was you can move the Nampa Fire Department from the public safety building, and this is where the quote comes from, and you can use impact fee revenues to pay for capital costs associated with relocating the fire department. We move forward to the next slide. Again in 2020, and this is during the annexation process, so we've annexed, we're in the year where we're underneath the city as employees. Galena Consulting again confirms that this is a legal way for the city of Nampa to fund new floor space for the Nampa Fire Administration, and it is to use police impact dollars for that purchase or renovation. At the time, the quote that was listed from the email from Galena Consulting, and it came with options as well, but for cost-wise, it was $2.1 to $2.5 million. Obviously, we just put the 2.1 on this slide. Next slide.
Mayor, Chief, point of clarity, what was the year that you guys were transitioning?
So the vote happened in November of 2020. So the annexation actually occurred on January 1 of 2021. And the way the annexation works is it takes, the collection for the fire district begins then. So the city and the district had to work together because the budget had already been budgeted for the city. So employees and operations stayed with the city for 1 full year. And then we as a district changed our budget year from October to January. So there was a 90-day period where the city and the district had to work together out of reserves to pay for the fire department because there was no tax drawn for that 90 days from either the district or the city. So I don't think most people realize that the city and the district funded the fire service for them for a quarter, but it was just part of what had to happen through the process.
Mayor, question?
Yes.
So Chief, you said the votes were taken, the votes were by district commissioners and city council?
Correct.
Is that question regarding moving to a district? Or, yes.
Related to the move to the district?
It was a very mutual, one thing I can say about the discussion, it was not a decision because of animosity, it was a decision with the mutuality of fire and city at the time saying, how best do we serve our public? It was not before, I'm going to say before, under a prior administration, there was more animosity. I don't know that it was as collaborative. This decision was a very collaborative decision, and it is with the intent is we all have our citizens' best interest at mind. How do we best serve our citizens with the fire safety that they need? And the fact that the city could not afford to fund the additional, we had been, 10 years talking about Fire Station 6?
Yeah, well, yeah, right at 8.
8, okay.
Like honestly, having it in a budget request for 8.
8 years. We just didn't have the funding. We were constantly battling for funding, and we realized that the citizens, when they vote, they can vote specifically for an increase, whereas being buried in the city, we were constantly, and I see Doug shaking his head, we were constantly trying to figure out how do we do this and how do we fund. And so it was a very mutual decision, and that's why this discussion is very important today, because it's easy when we get further separated to see the fire district as a separate entity. And it's important that we keep the mentality that this is us. It's we together. And so we have an interest in meeting the needs of our citizens and the public safety needs of our citizens. It should not be the separation. At the time when we made these decisions, the one thing that we knew we had to resolve that we hadn't resolved was the administrative space. We knew at the time that we were going to have to resolve it, but it didn't. Everything else now is pretty well resolved.
Yes.
We've got to wrap up our Fire Station 5 lease renewal, right? And then the training center.
With the work going on right now, that will be beyond any of our, I mean, we're hoping to secure both for the city as well. Actually for the airport, they count on that lease payment as part of their budget. When we looked at what the reality is of it would take to purchase, it would take us 50 years in lease payments to even come near the purchase price that it would need to be based on their requirements for selling it. Yeah, securing that lease for them. And really, we can go to the next slide. Really, it comes down to, I honestly believe as the future of Nampa, we'll have people look back on the history of the city. And I think when they do, they're going to see a huge pin in the timeline of when city council leadership made the decision to move to an annexation. I've told the mayor before, if it wasn't for her and her urging to relook at this opportunity, it would have been lost. But the truth is because of the partnership that was there, the trust that was in place, when people look back at it, it should be something that's celebrated. It truly was concreting the future of fire and EMS in the community of Nampa. And when we looked at what the goals were and why we were doing it, the first one was Station 6, and literally within months of moving to a district, the plan was in place and we began the process of building that station. I can tell you just through the budgeting process that we're completing now, we're on track to meet needs both for our benefits and pay, to maintain the highest level of skilled firefighters for the citizens of Nampa. And those were things that were very difficult when we were at the city because there's so many competing odds at play. I would hope that with us being separate entity and very specific money that's coming into us, we can focus really where all our funds are going, as well as opened up an opportunity that maybe there was some more leeway within the city's budget, because honestly, you're not negotiating with the fire department anymore for people. We've talked to Doug. When we look fiscally at what would have taken for Fire Station 6, we would have had the money for the building. We would have had the impact fees. But to staff that station with the 15 needed personnel would have been 2030 or later. So because of the opportunities that we have as a separate entity, whether that's FEMA grants that we received to just the focused money of knowing that when we have an increase in our budget that it goes directly to fire and EMS, I do think that it is a big pin in the history of our city, and I think think it is something that should be celebrated because the council and commission at the time truly did secure the safety and the future of EMS and fire in the city of Nampa. So really, we come down to this last issue that we have left in the annexation. I'd like to suggest to you that we have looked at other options. We promise that we've been hard at work. We've communicated with the Nampa School Board, trying to pick up one of the schools that they may have let go. We've talked to other partners. We've talked to the NDC. Is there opportunity for us to be included in another project? All those pathways have been looked at over the last 2.5, 3 years. And at this point, there has not been any outcomes. And the difficulty becomes, just as Councilman Reynolds said earlier, time is money, and the problem is when we left the public safety building, the 7,200 or 7,600 square feet, whichever plan you look at that we left, was worth a certain amount of money. As we research facilities that will work for us now, that certain amount of money is nowhere near what those facilities cost now. And so really, as the administrator for the fire department, what I'm needing to do is I need a decision so I can make plans moving forward. We've had some opportunities, but without a solid decision being made, we can't risk taking those chances without knowing what the future holds between the city and the district when it comes to our fire administration building. So really, I have two options up on the screen. I told Chief Huff the funniest option is we could move back in with him and have fun every day. He said not only no, but other stuff. That's not possible. We know that. The police department is still growing. You have another issue that's coming, and it's where are you going to put your police officers in the near future? So our preferred option is utilize the police department's impact fees to replace like space for the Nampa Fire Administration and relocate it when we were relocated from the public safety building. One of the things you need to know is Galena Consulting, as well as Tischler Bice, who is now the consultant that we use for impact fees, has said these funds can be collected through impact fees. It was through the growth of the police department that we were moved. And so if this is the option that was to be chosen, we need to change the police department CIP and increase it for this amount of money. They can collect that money over years to come, and it won't impact the CIP that they currently have and the plan that they have moving forward. It will be in addition to. The second option, or an alternate option, is to transfer ownership of the building that we're currently in at 9 12th Avenue South, along with some of the adjacent parking. Again, Galena Consulting had approved, if that was an option chosen by the city, they could still be reimbursed through the police impact fees for the cost of that building. So I guess what I'm hoping to clarify is that probably the highest priority, because we're in the process of changing CIPs right now, is to increase Nampa PD's CIP to the amount of money that would be agreed upon that could be used to house fire administration. At that point, it's growth paying for growth. It won't impact the Nampa Police Department's future CIP that they already had in place. And I believe that is a healthy and safe option that won't impact our current taxpayers, both of which we serve the same ones. And that's the last slide, Mayor. I do have the one more slide that's just the QR reader. Again, if you're interested in any of the story of our history when it comes to NDC and the public safety building or even the annexation and impact fees. But yeah, I stand for question. Councilman Bills, I did ask a few people to be here, just in case you had questions. Again, in 2006, I was a driver, and so a lot of this is just from me reading. I brought Bill Nichols, who has been the NDC legal and traveled this journey with NDC. I brought the Nampa Fire Department's legal, if you have any questions for Bill Punkeney. And then I believe Colin is on from Tischler Bice, if you needed confirmation about impact fee questions or any of those sorts of things. So I stand for questions.
Kirk, thank you. So Councilman Bills and Councilman Griffins, okay.
So I guess clarification for me is the fire department or fire association now, district is collecting impact fees, correct?
We do, yes.
And City of Nampa does that on behalf of the fire department?
Correct.
And does the City of Nampa get reimbursed for that administration work?
Yes. There is a built-in administrative fee with each impact fee collected.
And that's in the impact fee part?
Correct. And actually, that's not correct. We have to actually pay that. It can't be the impact fee can't be used for that administrative fee. So once we're transferred the impact fees, we pay an administrative fee. I think it's $15 per impact fee collected. So it has to come out of our general fund for that administrative fee.
So when the change from City of Nampa to the district, the issue of property and buildings, what was the discussion for the City of Nampa to transfer those buildings and property to the?
So I think in general, the conversation was that the district, with the annexation of the city's Nampa Fire Department, we represent the same citizens. So the citizens that paid for those facilities, including the district, because as we built all of those stations, other than Station 1, the district paid a portion of those buildings. So knowing that the same community members that paid to build those buildings would be the same community members serviced by those facilities and apparatus, they were transferred over to the district's ownership.
So I guess I need a clarification. Is you keep saying it serves the same citizens, but from a property tax point of view, and over the 30 years of paying property tax, heavily to the last 24, I'm confused that the same citizens. I understand the same citizens in the broader community are served by the fire department and jointly with the district until this change took place.
Yes.
But it was those who paid city taxes who paid for the fees, for the buildings and property.
So there was Councilman Bills, there was a JPA in place, which had a formula. So based on the percentage of calls ran to the district, as well as area operation budgets, there was a percentage of those budgets that have been paid since 1974 by the Nampa Fire Protection District. So when Station 2 or 3 was built, the city paid a portion, which was around 87%, and the district paid a portion of around 13% of that facility. I would say in partnership, the district was actually a very good partner for the city when it came to the fire department. They paid for all of the facilities that are sitting on the training grounds. They purchased the majority of our apparatus from the years of 2007 till 2018. So they did their share when it came to financing and funding the fire department. When we talk about taxpayers, those taxpayers, we can even use your city and fire tax now. That fire tax used to be contained within your city tax, right. And when we went to a district, it was broken off, and at that time, the city reduced their levy by that $10 million, that $10.5 million mark. So your city taxes, in reflection, went down with the addition of the new fire district tax. The citizens that lived in the district already saw a slight increase in that tax, but didn't see a change in how their property tax was collected through the county. But the same citizens that paid property tax for the fire department in 2018 are the same citizens plus new additions that are paying the tax for the Nampa Fire Department today.
And we did recognize, acknowledge, and discuss at the time that we had a responsibility to transfer the property, which were all the stations and other property, but this one was unresolved, but it was discussed that it had to be resolved. So the fact that it's coming today is not because we hadn't discussed it, it's that we hadn't made a decision. That we had a responsibility when we moved fire out of the Hugh Nichols Public Safety Building, that we had a responsibility to replace that square footage. We did it temporarily in the building that they're in, and at the time we did this transition to a district, we recognized that we had to get this done. That's why we're here today, because we need to get it done. The longer it sets, the more difficult it is for fire to then afford to move into the building that they're in.
Mayor and Council, I guess some other thoughts. So we're in the building we're in right now under a use agreement for a 3-year term. So should the city decide they want us to move out, they'll give us 3-year notice, and we'll have to exit the building that we're in. The other one that was very difficult during time of annexation, if you think we had just moved into the building we were in, The city really had interest in that building because there's some infrastructure in the basement. There's a lot of things that were happening in that building, from storage to Christmas to the speakers for the music were all housed in that building. So they were undecided and didn't at the time want to get rid of the building that we're in today, as well as the training grounds. And if you look at where our training grounds are, it's a 5-acre parcel that sits right next to wastewater. The leadership at wastewater doesn't have an option to the west because it's a Simplot-owned property. And so there was no interest in transferring that property to us. There wasn't interest in not letting us use it, but they just didn't want to get rid of it because in the future, 40 years from now, who knows where the growth of the wastewater was going to be. So we are in a 10-year use agreement for the property down at the training grounds. We're responsible for the facilities and the upkeep of the facilities that sit on the property, but the actual parcel itself belongs and is owned by the city.
Right. And I'm going to ask for that to be a discussion soon as well.
Okay.
But with our time going over, the difficulty I'm having is that you're wanting to increase police impact fees. I don't understand why fire's impact fees wouldn't be increased to deal with the growth. In other words, you moved in 4 years ago into the downtown building, and you've grown because of the district, and you've grown from adding Station 6. I'm not seeing where the city of Nampa is responsible for additional admin space from what you've had.
So I would agree.
Have I missed something on the
Councilman Bills,
footage at the
Mayor
Nichols building and the square footage of the downtown building?
Yeah, Mayor and Councilman Bills, I fully agree with you. If we were given the building we were in, there would be no conversation today if the building we were moved into was transferred to the fire district, because we would be in an administrative space. We do have growth impact fees for administration within our CIP. The problem is all impact fees are based upon current level of service. And so when we were removed from the public safety building, we were already at a current level of service that we can't collect impact fees for. So those realities are we do have growth for admin in our impact fees, but it is for the next 10 years of growth within administration, not previous years of already having administrative space.
It would be going back to the notes that were earlier in this presentation from Ann Westcott, and then with Conrad with Tischler Bice, talking about when we moved, at the time when we moved fire out of the public safety building, we did it because the police needed additional space. Because we had purchased our NDSC building, we did a huge shift in most departments in the cities within our buildings, and the other building happened to be available. So because of growth on police, and this is where Ann Westcott and Tischler Bice agreed that impact fees could fund moving fire out of there because police needed the space. So it was growth within the police department. So police impact fees could fund to move fire out because it was space, because police needed the growth area.
So
we just didn't at the time finalize this.
So at that time, there wasn't a change to the
CIP.
and the
And
collection
there could have been, and there wasn't. So even today, we could add it in. It would have been wise to have resolved this back then. And like Chief said, we could actually just give them the building that we moved them in. We could have transferred ownership to that building, just like we did every other fire station, because then it would have been making them whole at the time. Just, this is the space that you're currently using. The city wasn't comfortable with doing that, mainly because I think the cost of the investment in the building, but, well, really more about some of the internet that's servicing the facilities building and the storage for economic development, et cetera. But that would be the simple solution, would be just to transfer ownership of that building, and then we would have been done. Because that was the current space that they were using administratively. So I feel like the city has a responsibility, and this is why it's important to get this done, because I was here during the time, Chief was here during the time, we're familiar with the discussions that took place. I think, Victor, you were here at the time, and you're familiar with the same discussions. It's important that we resolve the fact that we did not finalize this issue and that we need to get it finalized.
Mayor, is there a
So-
contract or was this just an agreement?
If you go back through all of our discussions, and Chief has brought, we've had some documents that have come before council in the last year that have outlined all the different outstanding issues. And that was one of those outstanding issues that has come before council with the list of all the different things yet to be resolved.
Yep.
As Councilman Bills brought forward at the beginning, we've resolved all of them with the exception of this is the one outstanding item, which is why we're here today, and Councilman Griffiths was on.
Question, Chief, ballpark, what amount of funds would be needed? I know we said that it would have to be agreed upon, but that you would need from PD impact fees? Ballpark?
Mayor and Councilman Griffin, we're actually just looking to count, it was quoted at 2.1 million when we moved out. I'm not, we want to be good partners, and I guess the biggest thing I want to reiterate is I'm not asking for us to take that from the police impact fees that they've planned on. I'm asking for their impact fee to be increased so that they're not impacted by this. But 2.1 million was the amount quoted by Galena Consulting in 2020.
To follow up, what's the appraisal value ballpark of the 12th Avenue location if you were to get that transfer?
I would have to go with someone in the real, I know it's not $2.1 million. I know the rehab on it was over $700,000. So just knowing the plan for downtown, there may be a date in the future that it's worth $2 million. But again, it's not $2 million. But it's also, it solidifies what the district has and can move forward with, right? The mayor's aware, we've had several people we've had several options in some space that were available to us. But $2 million of our reserves is 50% of the reserves that we retain in our budgeting process, so just a little under 50%. And so for us to purchase a facility without an agreement of understanding what we'll be partnered with the city for, then we can't move forward. If we were to own the building we were in, then we know what we have. We also know that just in the economic development world, we're not necessarily, it's not that we're not wanted downtown, but we're not the best occupant for the citizens of Nampa to be downtown. We're a non-tax paying entity, and for the city to have a business in there that's paying taxes would be more appropriate. I would say the reality is knowing where we are and where we're going over the next 10 years, we would be searching for an exit plan from out of downtown. Not that we want to, we do truly enjoy being there. I mean, everything from our Halloween opportunities to just being right there it's a fun place to be. But we will grow, and so we'll need to find another location.
And just to restate, just for the clarity, when we move fire into that building, the reason it's police impact fees and not fire impact fees is because we moved fire out because police needed room to grow. Fire didn't need room to grow. We asked them to move. And so you can't collect impact fees. Fire cannot collect these impact fees. It has to be the police for growth. And again, we covered all of that back with Ann Westcott in the day, with Tischler Bice, with Conrad. It's been part of a discussion that's happened over the last number of years. But it did not get put in to the current CIP. We could put it in, or we could just do the building. So,
Mayor?
Yes.
The building solves the issue.
The building solves the issue.
Transfer the building, this issue is
Done.
And then you can reimburse yourself for the investment in that building through police impact fees. You still will have to change the impact fee, increase your police's impact fees, because you can reimburse yourself for the cost of that building.
And so what's the plan for the fire district? Sell the building, move somewhere else?
Yes, it would be in the future, it would be.
You've got that location identified?
Well, we did at one point. It's there. So we've been shopping. We have a couple opportunities, but having the flexibility to move when we can move would probably be the most appropriate thing to say, because we did have one opportunity that we missed just because we don't have the funds. If we would have owned the facility, the person was interested in a like trade.
And so how much square footage are you in?
We're in 8,000 square feet, I think. Just shy of 8,000 square feet.
Mayor?
Councilman Griffins?
Does a decision have to be made right now at this moment?
no.
Okay.
This is not an action item. This is an opportunity to present. The action will come back for an actual vote So today, this is an opportunity, we are past time for council to have a discussion today if we need to have a discussion, or we can come back, put a discussion with a recommendation at a council meeting.
So-
But no action today.
One of the big question marks for me, I would like, if we are able to have the location appraised, and then we'll be able to see what our investment was in that and what the value of the property would be if we were to transfer it to them. I don't like dealing with theoreticals. If we have exact numbers and saying a comparison of what the location would be, knowing that you're going to be moving out. I agree with you. I think downtown, if we're revitalizing it, it's great having you there, but a business opportunity, and that's going to happen on its own if we transfer it to you. So I would like to see the cost, the exacts, before making a decision. Obviously, I know we're not today now, and that gives me more peace, but that's kind of where my headspace is at.
Mayor Clay.
Yes, Councilman
So,
Rodriguez.
Chief Carpenter, I'm having a little bit of difficulty with this. And the reason why is twofold. One, I don't think you're within the downtown business district is a good idea, and I agree with you with that. I'd like to see a business in there. In the redevelopment plan that we have, you're in the way. And even though I like you to be there.
Yeah.
But it's the business that I'm looking at. So I agree with you need to move, yes. But I'm just having trouble, since you're a taxing district, why you believe the city of Nampa should give you this property and then you sell it for your own property. Maybe I should have more conversations with you.
You bet.
Is that, I don't know that we can, because.
You can,
Oh, okay.
You're welcome to
Because
have it.
right now, I'm about ready to tell you no.
Yeah.
But I don't know all the ins and outs of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I guess my solution would be, well, why don't you just raise your own impact fees and build your own building and give us the building back? Why don't you do that?
Because they're not allowed to.
I know.
Legally, they're not allowed to. And I'll stand firm. We moved them into that building because we needed space in the police department. So we moved them out.
So-
When we transferred every ownership for the district, we transferred everything to them, but we didn't give them their office space. So the fire district doesn't have the funds to go out. I mean, you can't just kick them out and say, I'm sorry, you don't have an admin building. We can't do that. And we were the ones that moved them out of the public safety building. So we have a responsibility to give them their office administrative space.
So why can't we do that?
Give it to them, we can. We can give them the building that we already moved them into.
No, I'm
as- or
referring
the-
to, you said we couldn't
Use impact fees?
have them vacate the building. Is
They're
there
in?
Is there an agreement to that we can't do that?
You do have the right,
have the
under a
right.
3-year use agreement. So
Oh, I see. Oh, that's
if the mayor called today and said, you need to be out, and then we have 3 years to get out of the way.
Yeah. Okay, so that is within the agreement, whatever,
Yes.
wherever that is?
Yeah, that's
it's part of
housed
our-
within the annexation agreement.
Oh, I see.
And that all went through, when we did the annexation agreement, there was a lot there
Okay.
in it. But it's part of the agreement, and
Mayor,
we
can
could
see
do that.
Can we
Yes.
see that agreement?
It's in our, we can find it. Cheryl will probably have you find it out of our council packet.
That'd be very
And,
helpful.
yeah,
So Mayor,
yes.
Chief, 8,000 square feet located within the district. So if there's another building that can be found, purchased, and do the same thing, reimbursed through impact fees. Location really is immaterial as far as your admin side.
Yeah, I mean, we would prefer to be somewhat central just for access to the crews because it's where our HR and payroll and all of that is. But, and we do have an option right now. We had an option come forward to us. It is within range of the $2 million request at the time of moving us. It would need a remodel, but we do have one option right now that's fairly close to not downtown, but just off the boulevard. We've looked at a couple other properties. To be honest, we looked at Lloyd Lumber for a little bit, and then Economic Development said, don't look downtown. And then we looked at some other facilities off of 12th Avenue off of Georgia. Those buildings are anywhere between $3 and $5 million currently. And again, I'm not asking for an increase of what was quoted at the time. My request is just if a decision will be made, then I can move forward with, or we as an organization can move forward with securing that space. And if that's downtown today, then we will probably pursue the property that's off the boulevard.
And another quick question, knowing the time is going, but the training facility, City of Napa gives the fire district notice as far as termination. You have 10 years. The cost of your move and replacement, that would be on the fire district?
So Boise Fire Department built their training facility, obviously difference in level of use. They have fire props that are gas props. We built all of ours pretty much ourselves, other than the main building. It would be about $30 million at least to replace what we have on site there, and that would be the base minimum of what if we were to have like for like. It would just the property alone would be difficult, but I would say at least $30 million.
You would expect the City of Nampa to come up with that?
No, what we discussed at that time is that would probably be a bonding issue at that point. I mean, once we were at that place in time, because now we'll be 15 years out into the future, it would no longer be, we could probably have some impact fees. We do have impact fees in our facilities for some training sites east and west, but that's really housed with a fire station. At that point, we'd be discussing a bond as a district in the future, but it would be a fairly sizable bond.
That would be voted upon by everybody within
Correct.
the district?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you remind me what the size of that training facility is?
5 acres.
It's 5 acres, okay. Thank you. Okay, it is 9:25. We have gone over. Thank you for the history lesson
I
and the
appreciate the
perspective.
time and opportunity.
Thank you. Council, do you have any other questions before we
Madam Mayor, I
adjourn?
just had
Yes.
one question, clarification. According to the information that I researched, Chief, the square footage in the Hugh Nichols building that you had was around 3,100 square feet. So I was wondering where you came up with the 7,200 square feet number?
I'll have to research again. I believe it came to us from Nicole Cecil, who at the time was in charge of moving us out of the public safety building. So I can research again. It's quoted in our 2018 CIP as 7,200 square feet.
I did verify that by looking at the plans myself, so I was just curious.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we be able to go back and do just a measurement? We knew what fire occupied, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like Chief Huff had a ruler anyway that he was
He
looking
could
on
probably
it, so
tell
we
us.
should have the measurements. I have one other question, Mayor.
I think that issue should be clarified. Because if you're in an 8,000 facility and you weren't occupying 8,000 square feet
Yes.
at the time of move, I think it really is a bearing as to how
And I guess
how it's going to get settled out.
definitely we would want to ensure the square feet for sure. And then just realize that that's not including any meeting space or parking space that were included in the facility as well.
Thank you.
Mayor, my final question, and I'll leave it be here. If we do transfer the property over to you, and as you grow, you'll end up needing a new space. I don't know where you're at space-wise in your location. We can use those property tax supplement from PD to give the transfer and a reimbursement from PD's impact fees. As you move on, are you able to collect your impact fees as you grow out of the building to get a bigger space? So it's not that you're contingent on just the transfer amount that we give you. You're also going to use impact fees to get your new space.
Yeah. Mayor and Councilman Griffin, we've already have those approved in the new CIP that was approved by the Nampa City DFAC back in June.
Thank you again.
Yeah.
I think at that, I would stand for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. City Council, just a reminder, we will have an executive session prior to the Monday night council meeting. We need an executive session that night, but rather than putting it at the end, we're going to put it at 5 o'clock. We'll do pizza like we normally do. Does that work for you guys? It's just an easier, flexible thing. And then please reach out to make sure that you're informed on all the issues, especially VRT. I'd love for you to visit with Mark Stoyer to fully understand that, all of it.